With the Ukraine crisis in its second week, the number of casualties and displaced people keeps rising. Russia claims it does not want to occupy Ukraine, but the claim has been met with deepened Western skepticism. Is President Vladimir Putin chasing a dream to resurrect the past? How ready is Moscow for a greater level of military actions? And what's the ultimate objective of Russia? I talked to Sergey Karaganov, Dean of World Economy and International Affairs at the Higher School of Economics, joining me from Moscow on what he calls the Putin doctrine. So we're pleased to be joined by Sergey Karaganov, Dean of the World Economy and International Affairs of the Higher School of Economics, joining us from Moscow. Professor Karaganov, thank you so much for joining us. So in an article published on February the 23rd, you wrote about Russia's new foreign policy, the Putin doctrine. You said Russia has entered a new kind of foreign policy, and you called it a constructive destruction. It's even a little bit difficult to pronounce it. Can you help us understand exactly what you mean by that?
The previous system of European security and Euro-Atlantic security has become dangerously obsolete and dangerous. It was formed when Russia was weak and still believing in the goodwill of the West. So it is dominated by Western institutions like NATO, like European Union, and which is even worse, these institutions, especially NATO, has been expanding closer and closer, expanding also, and bringing closer and closer the military infrastructure, thus increasing the direct military and potential military threat for Russia. This kind of unfair system could not and should not survive. And Russia is knowingly now trying to change that system and to create a much more fair system in Europe and elsewhere in the world.
So help us understand, what do you mean by destruction, and what do you mean by constructive here? You're talking about destructing the old system that has not worked by now, and you're trying to construct a new order. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, what is happening now, for example, I mean, we are even by use of force, which is unfortunate but nevertheless necessary, stopping NATO expansion. We are showing, first we offered them kind of a deal: stop NATO expansion, I mean, return to where you were, stop militarizing Ukraine, which is being made into spearhead of Western expansion, and actually gradually looks more and more like Nazi Germany, or militaristic Japan, I mean, in a way. Not yet, but they're going in that direction. So we said we stop that first. Second, we are probably withdrawing active participation in the Atlantic organizations. But we are, again, hoping that after a period of this tension, we shall build a much more fair and balanced system for the whole Eurasia, which would include, of course, some European countries, Russia, countries like Turkey, Iran, India, and of course China.
So what is going to happen to the U.S. supremacy? Basically, you're actually saying no more supremacy, no more hegemony, no more superpower status for the United States.
Well, the United States has been losing its superpower status very rapidly. The question is, they are clinging to its status, and that's why they are fighting rearguard battles, trying to create tensions on near China and pressing China, trying to press Russia with almost with outright, if not aggression, but very rough pressure. They have been trying to undermine many countries with color revolutions, But of course, they have been rapidly and will continue to rapidly lose their only superpower status. I mean, of course, we all know that. I mean, uh, the main aim of their policy is to undermine China because they know that China would become the power number one. But they also understand that Russia with China, China with Russia, are qualitatively stronger. That's why they try to undermine Russia. So next step to put more pressure on China. That's, I mean, more or less the strategy.
Sometimes when you want to push for change, when you push it very strongly, very hard, the consequences can be very strong, very dramatic as well, and sometimes it can hurt yourself, at least in the short term. Do you think maybe the process of initiating a new order, a new constructive destruction, can be done in a more in a less violent way so that the consequences would not be so dramatic by now?
We have been trying to do exactly that for at least 15 years. We're offering, we're talking, but unfortunately, our Western partners were unable or unwilling to listen. So it has been a very, very long process of persuasion. But now we come to a situation whereas there is a possibility that a very big country being in poor shape, but a big country which has been always for centuries part and parcel of Russia, but which was divided during the collapse of the Soviet Union, is being made at the spearhead of a possible aggression. That's why, I mean, waiting for more would have probably created a much more dangerous situation than we have already. So nobody is happy about these rough steps. But as far as I understand, the Russian leadership decided that in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it would be desperately worse.
You're talking about they are prepared for the potential consequence of the drastic change of destabilization of the current situation.
Uh, I assume, of course, that Russian leadership have been preparing for a few years. We have been also offering all kind of compromises. Last time it was about 2.5 months ago when we offered a stopping of NATO expansion, return of NATO uh, to country to the limits which were in the 90s, and also demilitarizing Ukraine, which they have been militarizing like mad. But we were not listened.
President Putin made that announcement, which sent shockwave around the world, saying that the strategic deterrence is put on a special state. What does that announcement have to do in his thinking? Is he sending a message saying, "I'm determined to go down, to pursue my goals, and don't try to mess with me"? Or what do you think is the message he's trying to send?
I think it is exactly you have exactly pronounced the Putin. I mean, the Putin tactics, not the Putin doctrine. He means exactly that. He says, let us get to a compromise, or else, there could be even escalation to higher levels of violence.
What kind of disruption do you foresee until a new balance can be achieved? That's going to be a very tumultuous period of time if both sides just keep adding fuel to the situation.
I hope that our Western partners will come to their senses. Of course, there is a problem which is debated in many scientific circles, including, I know among my Chinese colleagues, that is their drastic decline of the level of leadership of most Western countries. But we hope that they will come to senses before. But of course, it is when it will get into such a kind of a confrontation, you never know what will eventually come out. Our goal is to stop NATO expansion, and then to build up a lasting and fair peace in Europe, and then in Eurasia.
Can you deduce on the part of Mr. Putin that he does not have the dream to dial back the clock and reenact the Russian Empire? Because that was the suspicion many people had in their mind. That's why they don't trust him when he says he doesn't want to occupy Ukraine.
No. I mean, one, of course, there are all kind of things and all kind of people in Russia, but I assume that nobody in Russian leadership want to create the former Soviet Union, because the former Soviet Union has been a very unhappy country in terms of that Russia has been subsidizing heavily former Soviet republics. That's why most of them now are much poorer than Russia. Then we subsidized, our our called socialist camp in East Central Europe, and then a lot of countries in the third world. I mean, we were the donor of fantastic magnitude. We do not want to return to that and to take back that huge burden, which was one of the reasons why Soviet Union collapsed. What we want is to create a belt of friendly states around our borders, so we would not care about our long-term security.
Thank you so much, Professor Karaganov, for joining us from Moscow. A lot of information to unpack there already, but we appreciate your insight.